After over 100 videos on the channel, I've taught the essentials of storytelling from the necessary, such as archetypes, to the obscure, like stories without clear villains. Today it's time to light that fire under you and take you from saying someday to actually sitting down and pounding some keys. I'm going to tell you how I got started, my methods, and what it takes to get you on the path to writing the kind of stories you want to read. Before we get into that, though, here's a reminder to check out dcferguson.com for all of my latest videos, overviews of my books, exclusive behind-the-scenes content for each of my series, and you can sign up for my newsletter. I should also mention that you can help me out in a big way. If you like this video, subscribe and share it with any friends that also enjoy the art of storytelling. Now, my own promo there aside, I'm a novelist, right? Why would I be telling you to write a short story? Well, one of the biggest problems with writing a novel is that most people don't ever finish them. There can be many reasons for this, but for simplicity, let me say this. All I want you to commit to is writing a simple story you want to tell, whether that ends up being 20 pages or 200. I want you to feel what it's like to type the end on a story. Trust me, it's an amazing feeling. But it also does something to your brain. You'll come to realize that you can see a story from start to finish. Novels, screenplays, these are all just stories on a bigger scale. You can get there, and you'll see it too. So let's talk about getting started. Now, teachers you've had or other YouTubers you watched may have discussed the concept of brainstorming, but I'm not like other authors. Brainstorming to me implies that you're head empty, no ideas whatsoever. I'd like to give you more credit and a better starting point than that. What I want you to do is come up with one idea that you find cool. If you want to write sci-fi, let me have a cool sci-fi hook. If you want to write romance, let me know what is the sweetest way that two lovers can meet. You want to write a drama? Well, what's your big dramatic moment? If you want to write about the coolest fantasy warrior, what do they look like? I want you to write that down, right now. That's it. That's all it takes to get started. But we're going to take this one idea and we're going to build off of it. It may end up incorporating exactly what you envisioned, or it may change over the writing process, but that's the beauty of it. You're not committed here. There's no pressure at any point in this process. Heck, if you find yourself in need of a hook, I did a 5-part series on the channel where I gave away story hooks in almost every sci-fi and fantasy genre. Even if you don't use one, it might inspire you. Now you've got this one element of your story, a cool character, a scene you want to play out, a serendipitous meeting between two future lovers. Now what? Well, now we build out. When you think about this one thing, this person, this scene, where do they fit in the narrative of your favorite books and movies? Is this character a lead or a supporting role? Does this scene happen in the beginning, middle, or climax of the story? Take this first line you've written down and I want you to start making connections. He's a computer programmer in over his head, like Neo at the start of The Matrix. Or this scene would be a dramatic back and forth between two people, like the end of The Notebook. I want you to start pulling from your inspirations and making connections. A loyal sidekick but necessary foil, like Watson. A setting in the Catskills in 1960, like Dirty Dancing. Again, write this stuff down. You've heard the phrase, write what you know, and I did a whole video about that if you need a refresher. Every connection you're making to this, make it something you're comfortable with, something you have a lot to say about. Are you passionate about baking? Make your character a baker. Do you love working on cars? Why not put an engineer at the center of your sci-fi story? Now, write that down. At this point, if you've been making all these connections to your initial idea, you should have a good 5 or 6 things that you're thinking about incorporating. Now, it's time to pull out the big guns. This, as you may or may not have seen this before, is the Western 3-act structure for storytelling. Even when you don't use this as your guide, you're still going to write to this structure more often than not. To be honest, if you've grown up in Western civilization, this structure is so hardwired into you that the only way to avoid writing into it is if you're actively trying. So, better we know it's there and use it to our advantage. What I want you to do is take this image and I want you to graft it to those 5 or 6 pieces that you have there on this structure. That means you're now thinking about the main character, their rising action and commitment to the story, the drop or low point of the second act, and the climax. Oh my god, the pressure, right? You're basically committing to the whole story from start to finish here, right? No, absolutely not. I said there was no pressure in this process, right? Well, I meant it. I can't tell you how many times I've called an audible in my storytelling that dramatically changed not only what I was going to write, but even made me have to go back and change things I'd already written. You're not signing a contract here. No one's going to hold you to this, not even you. Got it? Okay, cool. Now, the next part takes a little while. You might want to pause me to do this next bit. I want you to write down your 3-act structure. All those ideas, your supporting inspirations, I want you to come up with 3 paragraphs. This isn't you telling the whole story. It's you explaining what each act does in the story, how it begins and ends. Look at this example. Here, my Act 1 is that I want my main character to be this guy in this world, and here's his problem. Things happen, and our hero becomes committed to the action. Act 2 shows him learning to fight this evil. He gains experience with it, the belief that he can defeat the bad guy. When he's faced with the bad guy, though, he loses. All hope seems lost. Act 3 sees our hero's renewed dedication to the fight, doing whatever he can to become even greater than he was the last time, and our big bad is defeated in the climax. 3 paragraphs. That's all I want you to come up with. Go ahead, pause and come back, I'll wait. Now, I want to show you something. This is the actual act structure that I really used for the novel that would become Incursion. Why am I showing you this? A few reasons. The first thing is that it might be longer than a paragraph per act, but I'd be willing to bet that yours is very close to mine. All we're doing is listing the general events of what happens in the act for the characters. We're not writing the story. We're talking about this happens, then this happens. Also note that I have this file called The Bureau up top there. That did not end up becoming the name of the book. Take note that even in my outline here, I'm leaving things in parentheses with question marks. That's me thinking on the page. I don't know if that's the idea I'm going to go with, but maybe. Do you see why I don't feel bound by anything I put down? I know these things are going to change. It's all part of the process. Along the way, you might have paused me for a long while. I started with this 3-act thing and I didn't know how to end it. Or sometimes the reverse is true. You know exactly the ending you wanted and didn't know how to work backwards. By the way, working backwards is easier sometimes, just an FYI. If you want to know about that, you can watch my God of the Gaps video where I explained exactly that. But that's one tip among many for getting stuck in your narrative. To that end, I want you to think about one thing that's going to be a key to your story, whether or not you get stuck. What is it about this story you want to tell? What are you trying to say? Again, don't feel pressured. It's okay to say, this is what I think true love looks like, and have that be good enough. Sometimes what I find helps me is to understand what I want to say by writing my story. It's kind of like messaging, but a lot more subtle. For example, Incursion was my idea to do a time travel action adventure, but I wanted a really complex relationship at the center of it, one that was about love, but not a romance. This is called your theme. It's what separates your story from others like it. So I want you to write down at the top of your outline what you're trying to say. It could be a phrase, a metaphor, whatever suits you, whatever makes this your story. There's one more thing I want you to write down on that paper. There are 3 major and 1 minor perspective to write in. You'll never want to use the minor one as your first outing in the world of writing, so basically your choices are first person, written as though you are the main character. All of your character's actions are, I did this, I felt that. Then there's third person limited, easily the most popular for writing in general. You write like a director, explaining who said what and who did this, but your focus is on one main character. What that means is that you can speak to their actions, their words, and their emotions, but no one else. The final one is third-person omniscient. This allows you to write like a god over your world, complete with the ability to speak about the emotions of all characters. This is hard to do well, but keep in mind it's also better suited to large ensemble casts than a story following a single character. Now, once you've picked a perspective that you like best, lock it in and write it down. This is the one thing that you can't change later on without rewriting everything. Now, I've done a little trick with you. If you've been following along and you've done the steps I've told you so far, then guess what? You have a story here. You already know where it starts and how it ends. But I'm not going to cast you to the wind yet and say go write me a book. That's too much and I still have more to feed you, baby bird. Some people, especially my friends with anxiety, may feel like they're too free at this point. You still don't have the structure of a story, just the bones of one, and you'd be right. I'm a planner myself, and I've made my feelings about flying by the seat of your pants very clear on this channel. The short version is, I think you can paint yourself into a corner without a good plan, and who wants the stress of sorting out that mess later when you can do it right now before you ever write a single word? That brings me to my next stage in the writing process. This one involves some basic math. How many beats are in your story? What's a beat, you ask? Well, look at the first half hour of The Matrix. We're introduced to Neo in his search for Morpheus. That's a beat. He finds Trinity and she brings him to Morpheus. That's a beat. Morpheus has a conversation with Neo and offers him a choice. That's a beat. Neo wakes up in the far-flung future. That's also a beat. Neo needs to learn the rules of the new world. That's a beat. Basically, anytime the story requires a change in scene, but also a change in what the characters are going through, that's a beat. So, now I want you to count all of yours in those 3 paragraphs you wrote. How many do you have? To give you an idea, my short story, Cora Blake, Arcane Agent, has 7 chapters, which is 7 major beats in the 3-act structure. That's 2 in Act 1, 3 in Act 2, and then 2 in the 3rd act. I want you to take those beats, the fewer the better when writing short stories, and I want you to call them something else when you write them down. We're going to call them chapters. Chapter 1, this happens. We introduce this character, then this happens. Now, I want you to do one thing in particular when you write this down, okay? I want you to end every chapter with a sentence that connects it to the next. It can be as simple as the chapter ends with this character wondering where to go next, and then when you write the next chapter, you're going to set that up. So, chapter 2, the character realizes they need to go here and starts heading there. What are we going to type next? That's right. The setup for the following chapter. You see what we're doing here? We're creating a flow as we move from one chapter to the next. I call these my chapter breakdowns, and these are often the Bible by which I'll write the entire book when I'm finished. Again, will I stick to it religiously as though I've signed a contract with myself? Hell no. I make changes all the time as my ideas sharpen, and I get a better vision of how I want the story to play out. And here's one of my chapter breakdowns for Incursion. You see how it's only 3 or 4 lines, but it tells the story of the chapter, like a mini story within the larger story. This makes it easy to write, because now we don't have to worry about writing a whole story, just this mini story that connects to the next one. We know what we want to have happen in this chapter and how it ends, so now we just need to write that. Is this where I leave you? No, not just yet. For all your planning and what we've done together, it can still be daunting to sit at the desk and just start typing. I want you to know that's not a feeling that ever completely goes away with experience. Just because I know the kind of person I want to write doesn't mean I know them. And that's where this next part comes in. If you've been following along, now you have a 3-act breakdown and then a chapter breakdown. You have the roadmap of the whole story. Sitting down to actually start writing this, however, is another thing altogether. What I want you to focus on in this first actual writing session is one thing only. Write the mini story of your first chapter breakdown, start to finish. The reason I want you to do this is to explore your main character, which I'm going to presume is the one that's featured in the first chapter, because why wouldn't they be? The story is about them, right? Well, you need them to inform you of who they are. They may surprise you. They may speak and act in a way you didn't plan for, but makes sense for them as a person. Another thing I want you to practice is show, don't tell. Your first instinct is to treat a description of someone like a checklist. He was wearing a white dress shirt with a black tie. No, let's not do that. As he approached the door, he nervously adjusted the knot of his black tie. I want you to fold descriptions into actions. Make how they're dressed relevant to the painting of the picture of where, when, and how, and why of the scene. This is a good time to practice because we don't want to info dump. It's a bad habit that's harder to break than never picking it up at all. The next thing I want you to focus on is how your characters speak and interact with each other. But DC, I'm not good with dialogue. I never know how to make a believable conversation. Well, guy that talks to your screen, there's a couple of fixes for that. The first and most obvious is that I want you to go watch the Quentin Tarantino film Reservoir Dogs. Not only a great and enjoyable movie, but it's literally a class in dialogue all by itself. This was the film that opened my eyes to what great, realistic dialogue can be written into a story. There is literally a scene in the movie where one character is teaching another character how to tell a completely made-up story, how to lie to a group of people and make them believe you. You can't ask for better than that. But I will also tell you that from my own personal experience, good dialogue is enforced. If you're trying to get a character to give the reader information, and no matter how you type it, it sounds weird or corny, you're doing it wrong. Calm down, take a breath, and I want you to write down how you would explain it to me. Your words out of your mouth, then put them on the page. You see how much better that sounds? If you try to use dialogue as anything except the transcript of what one person says to another, it will always read like a writing device. It's always inauthentic. That said, it's also a chance for you to experiment with voice. Assuming this is your first time writing, you may feel silly doing this stuff in a mirror or practicing both sides of a conversation in your head. Don't. You need to understand that your main character isn't you, and neither are the people they speak with in your writing. As such, all of these conversations in your story are made up, and every one of them is going to sound different from your real voice. You don't seriously think that the Master of Kung Fu and Friendship talks like this in real life, do you? Of course not. I'm reading from a script I wrote. The real me is awkward, tells inappropriate jokes, and is prone to putting his foot in his mouth and cursing a metric ton. So, I want your characters to be inspired by people in your life, interesting people you've crossed, and yes, even characters you've seen in other works that have inspired you. For example, in the Dragon's Dream saga, the character of Johnny Clean, the aging sniper, is directly inspired by Harvey Keitel's character in the aforementioned film, Reservoir Dogs. There is nothing in any of the 8 books that would ever tell you that. You would never even know if I didn't just say it. But when I was writing him, I imagined that character in this world and how he would speak to my characters. And that's how I gave him a voice. And that voice is different from every other character in the books. So, how long should a chapter be? Well, they can be incredibly short to incredibly long, depending on what you're writing and how. But let's take writing devices and all of that out of the equation and just say this is your first time writing. Aim for 3,000 words. Action scenes will always take more, so figure a big fight scene or a car chase is going to go like 4,000. If you've come significantly under that, you're probably thin on dialogue, description, or you're rushing. Take your time. Smell the roses, then describe that scent to me. If you go over by a little bit, no worries. If you're pushing over 5,000, you may be doing too much or over-describing. But again, your story and your mileage may vary. These are not hard and fast rules. All of the cool stuff we get to practice in this first chapter. I'm still holding your hand here, but this is where I let you fly. If you've gotten this far, you've written your first complete chapter in a short story. I don't care if it's 4 pages or 12. You began and ended what you set out to do. Now, I want you to look again at the chapter breakdown. No, not the whole thing, just the next chapter. You have a character with a voice. You left a cliffhanger of sorts to the next chapter. So, that's what you're writing next. And you know what happens after that? That's right, you do it again. All the while you're making the story you wanted to tell come to life. Once it's set on the page, you've made it real. You're making this cool character live and breathe, or you're building to that dramatic scene you really want to see play out. I don't know what else to say except congratulations, now you're a writer. It may be for sport, hobby, learning, or the first step in a long path to becoming a novelist yourself. But that's what this was about. Getting you off your butt to write that comic book, that story, that screenplay, even that original Dungeons & Dragons campaign you've been wanting to see. As your skill improves, you're going to have more advanced questions. Luckily, I just happen to have like 100 more videos on this channel to answer many of those questions. But if you think of anything you'd like me to cover, please be sure to comment below. This week's episode was a bit of a departure from the nuts and bolts of storytelling, but I think it's overdue that I actually teach some of my friends out there how to get started. Maybe someone out there will find this the good swift kick in the rump they needed to see that they can really do it. And that's you. You can really do it. And if anyone asks who told you that you could write, you can say that you were told by the Master of Kung Fu and Friendship. It won't mean anything to them, but you'll know. Don't forget to check out my new website, the link's in the description below. You'll also find the link to my newsletter in the comments where you can get a free book, read about all of my latest projects, and find other indie authors for your next great read. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear about new videos, and as always, have fun and get crafting.